constitutional. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish as members, as we consider the issue of this amendment, let's look at it also as a parliament, whereby we are supposed also to be extremely constitutional. We are fighting for CDF, but as it leads, it's not constitutional. There are issues of gender, as the parliament is unconstitutional. The issue of opposition leader, everybody on the ground just says, this person who had over 6 million votes, he has almost half of the constituent voters of the whole country who are behind him. And this person doesn't have an office. The leader of minority cannot take the position of the official opposition leader who was the presidential candidate who was following the person who took the position. Therefore, me, I'm looking at it that the president wants to bring an issue of constitutionality whereby you don't fight the person who was second after the president is just trying to fit. Is just trying to beg for positions. That person should have an official office, should have all constitutional support that he needs as a person, whereby he doesn't need to beg for people to support him. He needs to be supported by the government. On issue mostly of this CS coming to parliament, the CS hides in committees. If you reach the CS for water, the CS for water, the people he recognizes as leaders are members of the committee of water. The CS for infrastructure, he honors and respects the committee members, who are only 15 members. The rest 290, we are dealt with a second. Therefore, whenever it's brought here on an issue in Kangema, whereby the road has been left out, nothing is going on, when you visit his office, he just communicates with the committee members, he feels he's safe, but I can be able to question him here in the floor. Therefore, the issue of the CS coming on the floor is not mostly on small issues that can be managed by the committee. But there are areas as members of parliament, we must tackle them, we must question them whenever our public members can be able to hear how we are engaging with them and how we are talking about some of the issues has been left. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I wish we just look at this amendment as if it's not about the issue of the party, an issue of the presidency, but it's an issue of constitutionalism whereby we will make everything constitutional so that even judiciary, we can be able also to target them. Now we can question them, then they tell us, you are telling us to be constitutional. How is your parliament? Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support the motion and I wish all the members to take the position we support the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much. This chance goes to Honorable Gitonga Murugara of Tharaka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, allow me also to voice my support for this motion, which is pursuant to the memorandum we received from His Excellency the President, making certain recommendations. First and foremost, it's important we clear the air because there is anxiety, there are fears that the President may actually be initiating some constitutional reforms or amendments similar to the BBI which was rejected. It is important to point out that there is distinction between the BBI and the memorandum we have received, in that the BBI clearly was an initiative of the President and the Executive. The Gazette notices that initiated the process were signed by His Excellency the President then, while he went ahead to constitute the committee that came up with a proposed constitutional amendment. As far as this is concerned, what the President has done is to make recommendations in his capacity, his two capacities. The first one being the President of the Republic of Kenya, and he is entitled to do so on behalf of the people of Kenya who elected him. Number two, also as a citizen, and he has a right to do so as a citizen, to make proposals to this House to consider parliamentary initiative or a popular initiative, whatever it is that has to be considered. The memorandum talks about 4 issues. The first one being the 2/3 gender rule, very important because of the constitutional article which exists, that if this House does not enact laws relating to the 2/3 gender rule, then it stands dissolved. Now, it is important to remind the House that the former Chief Justice Maraga actually made the advisory that the House, the 12th Parliament, had to be dissolved because it had failed to comply with that constitutional provision. Fortunately, it wasn't, but that is the farthest it went. It remains law in this country, and if we do not follow what the Constitution says, there is that risk. The second one relates to the CDF, the GAF, and the Senate Fund. We've already debated extensively regarding this, the importance of those funds, and why they should actually be entrenched in the Constitution. The third one relates to the office of the official opposition leader. And this is where there are jitters as to whether we are creating an office for somebody. There are arguments that this House cannot amend the Constitution to comply with that proposal. One reason being given is that our country follows what is known as the presidential system of government, while in areas where, or in the countries where we have the official opposition leader, the system of government is parliamentary, as found in Australia, found in England, or UK, Canada, and such other Commonwealth countries. I do not personally agree, and I'll be persuading my committee, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, to see it from a different perspective. That even if we do have a presidential system, there are bits and pieces that marry our system with the parliamentary system. It's those bits and pieces that we are going to exploit, that we are going to use, so that we are able to bring in this office. The importance of the office cannot be overemphasized. The reason being that the person who comes number 2 after a general election is a very important person. And this is for posterity. It doesn't have to have the last elections in mind. That person has a lot to contribute when it comes to checks and balances of the government. It's also important to know where to find this person. For example, now, 2 of these issues have been referred to my committee, Justice and Legal Affairs. We would want to hear from the leader of opposition exactly what his views are. But as we speak today, we do not know where to find him. We do not have to go to rallies to find him. If we go to Capitol Hill, where he used to be the last time, possibly to be said we are going for Mwosho Moja. So, where do we find him? Where do we take his views from? Do we meet him in one of the committee rooms in the parliament? That is reasonable. From now henceforth, we should consider according that office the respect it deserves, so that the occupier, who is going to be anyone ranging from the members of parliament who are here and others who will be elected in the future, can actually sit in that office, can be consulted on all matters that may come into deliberation in this House and in this country. 2 of the matters are committed to Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, and I confirm we will move with the expedition to actually determine them so that this committee has a house. I know for sure we have to do a public participation. We have to go around the country as members of parliament and members of that committee, obtaining views from Kenyans. And here, what we are dealing with are proposals. Kenyans can actually reject these proposals in total. If that happens, it's for the good of the country, it is the will of the people. If Kenyans agree that Parliament should consider, then we will move to the next level to determine whether these are parliamentary initiative amendments or they are popular initiatives, which means we have to go to referendum, and we will require a referendum law to actually guide us. We do not have one at the present moment, but we should be looking into having an act of parliament on a referendum, because we have said it before in the 12th parliament, we do not know how to operate or how to actualize a referendum without law. The Supreme Court has also pointed out to us regarding this. And finally, we have the the other recommendation made by the president, which is that cabinet secretaries do come to the House to answer questions. And there are, again, jitters, anxiety that we are bringing strangers into the House. We are also contravening the law that this is not a parliamentary system where cabinet ministers are members of parliament and can sit in the House and, and deal with matters relating to the executive. Our position, as I said again, it's barring the two. Because when we brought the 2010 Constitution, we allowed two strangers expressly to come into the House, address the House, and whatever they propose is acted on by the House. The first stranger who comes in is His Excellency the President. He actually has that mandate from the Constitution. He comes over here to make the State of the Nation address, and we debate that address thereafter. And we actualize some of the views he gives to us in the form of laws, regulations, and motions. The second person who comes over here is the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Finance. Again, this is given by the Constitution. He comes over here, he gives us the budgetary estimates after Parliament has looked at them, as we are doing now, right from the supplementary budget to the budget policy statement, which has just been tabled, and eventually the parliamentary estimates. This is provided by the Constitution. Nothing stops us as the House with our handmaidens and the standing orders, as I heard Honorable Nyikal saying. Standing orders are handmaidens of this House. They are not cast in stone. That is why at all times we have what is called the saving provision of the standing orders, which gives the Speaker the power to rule on anything that is not provided. And that's a standing order number one. But in this particular case, we have standing orders which we can amend. And after the amendment, for sure what is going to happen is we are able to allow cabinet secretaries to come here and answer questions. We are also able to interrogate them. We are also able to ensure that they do not get away with the escapist answers, which is what we get from chairmen of committees when they came to read statements, to read answers to questions which they know nothing about. So this is a very important motion, and I would urge the House, we debate it soberly. There are proposals, they are not cast in stone. The decision lies with the House and with the Kenyans. With those remarks, I do support the motion.
Thank you, Sir George. The Honorable John Badi, Emeritus, nominated member by ODM.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion. This is just a general motion, Madam Speaker. I know we will be dealing with the specifics. Whereas I don't have a problem with the substance of the memorandum by the President to Parliament, the four key issues are issues that have been debated, talked about largely and widely in this country. The issue of official opposition and where that position should sit has been debated largely. The issue of the funding, I cannot overemphasize. And I know there is a process that is in place that will ensure that we anchor and constitutionalize in a way that now those who have been doubting the constitutionality, because I don't agree with the position of the MP for Kangema that CDF is unconstitutional. It is not. But there are people who are trying to portray it as unconstitutional. We want to seal those loopholes. I have no problem with that. I don't have a problem with answering questions before people's representatives. I also don't have a problem at all with the gender principle, because we embedded it in the Constitution. We need to actualize it. But I have a problem with the two things. Madam Speaker, number one is the process and the procedure. And number two is the principles and honesty in politics in this country. So beginning with the number one issue on the process and the procedure, whereas my colleagues across the aisle are really struggling to separate and distinguish how different it is between the memorandum from President William Ruto and the process that was started by the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, I don't see any difference. In fact, if you ask me, the initiative by President Uhuru Kenyatta had more people participation than this that is now being generated by William Ruto. Why do I say so? At least for President Uhuru Kenyatta, he started a process with the people. He created a task force which went to the people. This one is a president who is writing direct to parliament, no consultation, we don't even know who he spoke to. Whether he spoke to people who visited him at State House, I don't know. This one is a direct initiative by the president. I just want to caution members of parliament and the people of Kenya that it is not right, and I want to repeat it, it is not right to encourage the president to initiate constitutional amendments. This country has enjoyed democracy fairly compared to our counterparts across the region. This country is standing out. This country, probably with Ghana, are standing out as countries that are promising in terms of democracy. We should not allow any indication of an individual rolling back those gains. And there is a possibility that one can test waters. Don't allow the president to start testing waters by writing to parliament for constitutional amendment tomorrow. And with the gerrymandering that I have already started seeing, and the games being played around, with the members of the opposition now being invited at will, and Jubilee almost gone to the other side, with MDG gone, with UDM gone, and many, many individual MPs, including now my party, is under threat of being raided. I foresee a possibility of a president, once emboldened, can recommend far-reaching amendments to the Constitution, which may even take us to a life presidency. That is my fear. Number two, Madam Speaker, look at the issues that have been raised in the memorandum, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, when we raised most of these issues, look at BBI. BBI recommended that the person who comes second in presidential election should be made a member of parliament to be in this house, to be able to participate and lead the troops from the floor of the house. Look at the issue of the cabinet. We recommended that cabinet should come from parliament. And we said that even those who would come from outside would be made ex-officio members of parliament, as Attorney General used to be. Madam Speaker, on the issue of the two-thirds gender principle, that has been captured very well and exhaustively in detail in the BBI. Madam Speaker, I can say in a nutshell that when we proposed this to the people of Kenya, we were called names. I remember Kenya Kwanza and the leadership of the Kenya Kwanza called us selfish, people who are interested in grabbing power, people who want to extend power and existence in office of certain unnamed individuals, but the target was Uhuru Kenyatta. People who are looking for space for people who should be retiring, that was the word then. And we were told that we were not focusing on the needs of the people of Kenya, and that the people of Kenya are suffering. That constitutional amendment is not a priority. Madam Speaker, I don't know whether now the people of Kenya are enjoying, and that the living standard is now, the cost of living is low. Yet, when I walk across, we are suffering even more than last year. The cost of food is unaffordable. There is the drought situation in the country. How I wish that the language of President William Ruto, when he was campaigning, he sticks to that script and make the people of Kenya have a bearable life. Instead of writing memorandums to us, these are issues we can deal with. We can sit down as a country and agree that we want to go the route of constitutional amendment to introduce the official leader of opposition, to introduce cabinet secretary to come to parliament and become members of parliament instead of passing through the back door and escape routes to look for a way of bringing strangers in the house. And I heard Honorable Murugara saying that we allowed some 2 strangers. The president is not a stranger. Look at the presidential systems across the world. The president is part of a legislative process of the country. That is why he is the last one to assent to the bills. He cannot be a stranger. The other issue that you have brought of the CS for Treasury, that is not a constitutional provision. In the Constitution, it is only allowed to make pronouncement. He can even make it from Uhuru Park, from KICC. It is us who decided to bring in the standing order provision to allow him to stand there, which is, in my view, unconstitutional. But we are living with it. And by the way, those pronouncements don't make any, there is no value to those pronouncements. We are only living with our neighbors in the East African community. Madam Speaker, I want to wind up by saying this very strongly, that there is dishonesty in this country. How I wish that, and Dr. William Ruto is my friend, how I wish that he went back to his campaign pledges. Our people are suffering. Constitutional amendment, I want to take now his position when he was campaigning. Constitutional amendment is not a priority for this country. The priority is the cost of living. Don't overtax our people. Stop snooping in our phones. If I send money to my mother, that is not income to my mother. It is a transfer of resources. He should consult people like us who have extensive and wide knowledge in financial management. The issue of taxation should be left to KRA. The president can never be a tax collection agent. We have competent people in KRA. If Kenyatta family is not paying tax, they must pay. But let KRA follow them. Anyone who is not paying tax should pay. But let KRA follow them. Let us not weaponize KRA. You are the ones who told us that President Uhuru Kenyatta was weaponizing state institutions. You are doing exactly that. You are weaponizing KRA. You have already made judiciary impotent. We are moving in a very dangerous direction. That is why I'm reluctant to accept this idea of all of us trying to run to the president. We want to support your government. The president has enough members of parliament to support his government. We must be here to provide checks and balances to this executive. And Madam Speaker, you want more. I can hear the majority leader saying they want more because they have bad intention. You want to make bad laws in this country without absolute numbers. I am still very comfortable where I am. And to Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, he said I may be official opposition leader. I want to be president of this country, not official opposition leader. I will be president of this country, not official opposition leader. I don't want to official opposition leader. I've been minority leader. It is enough for me. I want to now move up and become the president of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I oppose the motion.
The Honorable Member for Kisii County, Honorable Donya Doris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we go through this debate, I will agree with some members in terms of gender. Women are transformational role models. Due to the challenges that they face, they will always want to leave good marks. They will always want to perform, and women will be number one to talk about issues to do with gender, GBV, when there are job opportunities. We will always stand firm to make sure that women are allocated their portion. As we go through the constitutional amendment discussion, we must consider those that improve the lives of our people. Our changes should be on issues that promote the lives of Kenyans, issues to deal with poverty, not issues to deal with individuals. So change of constitution, Madam Speaker, should be changes that make mwananchi happy, not those that are for leaders. As I stand from this end, like I come from Kisii County, we have issues to do with FGM, issues that our male counterparts will rarely speak about. So when we consider the gender balance issue, I'm sure most of the women seated in this house will understand things to do with GBV, will understand things to do with girl child, even the issues of sanitary pads. this aligns well with women more than it aligns well with our male counterparts. So this I see is very paramount in terms of the constitutional changes on gender and even the allocations of affirmative action fund. This, when we consider this in the constitution and it is not challenged, women will sit and put focus to make sure that there is enough for women. As it is now, we are competing with the male members of parliament in terms of bursaries and even other small activities that happen on the ground. So I support the motion, but differ a little bit on bringing the ministers to the floor of the House for questioning, since that should be taken care of by the committee members. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kibwezi West, Honorable Ikomas Mutuse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand first of all to contribute to the motion, to the memorandum by His Excellency the President that came to the House proposing several constitutional amendments. Regarding the matter of CDF, Madam Speaker and the House are aware that we debated that extensively. We also formed a joint committee with the Senate, and the presidential memorandum can only be seen to add credibility to the proposal by the Honorable Gishimo and the Honorable Member for Matungulu that was debated in a similar manner before this House. I would urge honorable members to let that matter be dealt with by the joint committee of this Assembly and the Senate so that we make progress, so that there is harmony in the presidential proposal and the proposal that this House had initiated before the presidential memorandum. On the issue of the gender role, all of us agree that we have an history where women were not participating in our governance institutions as much as they should. We also know that the contribution of women in the development of our economy and in building our families cannot be gainsaid. And therefore, and we also know that we have been at a constitutional crisis, so to speak, because none other than the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, retired Chief Justice Maraga, advised this country that this House, the 12th Parliament and even this 13th Parliament are unconstitutional regarding to the 2/3 gender principle. And therefore, there is urgency in considering the proposals by the President so that we see how we can make this House and the Senate and the county assemblies, I know the county assemblies are planned, constitutional. Madam Speaker, the President, alongside CDF and NGAF, is also proposing the Senate Oversight Fund. Wisdom is that the Constitution has not just created the House of Senate. The Constitution has created the National Assembly and the Senate as Parliament. And therefore, our proposal will be to rename the Senate Oversight Fund as Parliamentary Oversight Fund, so that even members of the National Assembly can be facilitated in their oversight duties in their constituencies, and those who oversight counties, like the women representatives, can also be facilitated to do their work. Madam Speaker, the elephant in the House is the creation of the office of the Leader of Official Opposition. There are two technical challenges that have been that have come forth by those who are opposed to the proposal by the President. Number one, they have argued that in 2010, as a country, we chose a presidential system of government. And within a presidential system of government, it is alien to have the Leader of Official Opposition, the position of the Leader of Official Opposition. As a student of law, I know that the law is a phenomenon of the society. We know, in students of sociological jurisprudence know that law follows society. And we also know that the troops in the opposition, the 6 million, 8 million people who voted for the opposition, have their leadership. And the reality is that that leadership does not have a forum to air their views. And it is important in living with the reality of our society to create a forum for the opposition to be able to air their views. Number two, the lack of a forum by the opposition to air their views continues to weaken the opposition election to another. And therefore, there is, in terms of building our democracy, in terms of strengthening our democracy, there is a lot of wisdom in creating the office of the leader of opposition as an institution, not as an office for an individual, as an institution that speaks to the people who vote for the opposition, Kenyans who vote for the opposition, leaders elected at different levels, may they be MCS, may they be members of parliament, so that they have a constitutional and institutional mechanism to canvass their issues, so that when they come before this house, those issues are canvassed by the membership of the opposition. Madam Speaker, I therefore propose that as we debate, we also look at the reality of our society, so that we do not imprison ourselves in constitutional technicalities and ignore the reality of our society. The person who sits in this house as the leader of minority may not be the person who controls the rank and file of the opposition. The rank and file of the opposition is controlled, as is following, as is leadership outside this house. And partly why that leadership will find expression in political rallies is because they do not have an official forum where they can air their views. And therefore I want to persuade members that we craft our constitution to live to the realities of our society as opposed to imprisoning ourselves to technicalities. Madam Speaker, the other technicality that has been raised, and I'm happy the Honorable John Bandi spoke before us, is that the President, pursuant to the judgment of the Supreme Court on the BBI, all the way from the High Court through the Court of Appeal, the President cannot initiate a constitutional amendment. I think we need to distinguish two issues here. Number one is that there are two routes to amending a constitution. There is a parliamentary route and there is a popular initiative route. My careful reading of the BBI judgment is that the President is barred from initiating a popular initiative because that route, as rightly found by the Supreme Court, is the preserve of Wanjiku. Number two, even further, is that my reading of the presidential memorandum is that it is not in itself an initiative to amend the Constitution. It is a proposal to this House. Members would realize that the three arms of government, this is the only arm of government, Parliament, and therefore the National Assembly, that is given the constitutional power to legislate, to make laws. And therefore, for the arms of government to speak to each other, the President is asking the arm that is mandated by the Constitution to debate. He is not telling us, please, this is a proposal. This is not a bill. It has not come to this House as a bill to amend the Constitution. It has come as a view by a citizen of the Republic who is also the President. And that citizen has a right to propose. This House has a right to debate, and I suppose that's why we are doing a general debate, to agree or disagree. At the time when we agree is when now we shall have mechanisms to progress this further, and then we can now decide whether it is a popular initiative, whether some of them require a popular initiative, whether others require a parliamentary initiative. But at a personal level, having carefully looked at them, I'm persuaded